Hey guys, sorry this is a little bit late this week. It was a long unit and I didn't have time to record last night. Like I told you guys in live session today, so I'm just going to go on and record this now. If you watch the live session video, then you know that the correct answer to this question is A. So just feel free to go in and watch that again if you have questions. Do this week. So this week we have the Unit 11 material. If you're having any trouble with this, feel free to ask me. None of our material locks for the lock date. Everything is still available. I also released all of the extra credit grades, so that should bump your grade a little bit if you've done some of that. If you have questions, just let me know, but just be aware that nothing locked for us. All right, everything is still in here and is still working. Here's your key terms for this week. Our people are still the same because we're kind of still working on the same unit. So our key people, and we're going to talk about PSIJA, we're going to talk about Kohlberg, we're going to talk about Erickson. So we're going to talk about several of these specifically this week. So we're looking at the developing mind. We're talking about lifespan this week. So we're talking about growth from birth to basically old age. So we have to start prenatal. So right after fertilization, for the first 2 weeks of development, it's considered a zygote. From weeks 3 to 8, it's considered an embryo when it's doing the mass reproduction. And then it is not considered a fetus until about week 8 of 40 weeks. Now, viability for a fetus is generally considered around 24 weeks. That's 6 months where the baby can survive outside of the womb. I have heard of some as early as 20 and 22 weeks. That is very, very unlikely, and the mortality rate for those preemies is very, very small. So they consider viability at 24 weeks. Anything before that, and I mean, it's just not really possible for the baby to survive. And they come with huge, huge health risks. Here is a premature baby who's at risk of long-term, lung, vision, and even brain disorders. Those are things that can be a side effect of premature birth. All right, so the risk of birth defects does rise with maternal age. The risk specifically for Down syndrome grows exponentially once the mother reaches 40 years old. Unfortunately, it just rises from that point on because you tend to get altered versions of the egg with DNA that's not correct in there. So you end up with that extra chromosome, which is what causes Down syndrome. Now, I have heard of people as young as 22 having a baby with Down syndrome. So it just depends, but it is a significant risk with maternal age increasing after the age of 40. This shows some external environmental risks that are pertinent that can happen at different stages. Most of these risks happen early in the pregnancy. I mean, I'm talking, most of the time before people even realize that they're pregnant, which is between 6 and 8 weeks. Very few people realize that they're pregnant before that point. And unfortunately, that's when a lot of these changes would happen. Based on, alcohol consumption, smoking, medications. It's funny that they have acetaminophen on here. That's Tylenol. When I was pregnant with my daughter, Tylenol was basically the only thing they would let pregnant women take. And now they're saying that it can cause risks of ADHD. which is interesting because I have a hyperactive daughter. So it's interesting that now they're saying that Tylenol is something that can cause side effects when, 15 years ago, that was the standard, oh, it's fine, it doesn't cause any problems. So just be aware things are always changing, and they can cause different side effects, like Dilantin. It is an epilepsy medicine, but it can cause heart defects. It can cause cleft palate, intellectual difficulties. Chickenpox can cause scarring, blindness, seizures. Aspirin can cause heart defects and, again, intellectual difficulties. So there's different things on there. Make sure you take a look at that list. Fetal alcohol syndrome is another one of those problems that most of the time people aren't aware of beforehand. Even a small amount of alcohol early in the pregnancy can cause fetal alcohol syndrome. This can be, there's physical features as well as an actual change in the size and shape of a brain of a baby with fetal alcohol syndrome. A lot of this is from binge drinking, but any alcohol consumption during pregnancy can cause this. And people that have had a child with fetal alcohol syndrome previously are at higher risk for it happening again. So that's something that they look at. Fetal alcohol syndrome, most of the time these children are taken away from their parents. They're not allowed to stay with them because they have caused this problem. So that's something that you have to look out for. Newborns are considered birth to 28 days. That's the classification for a newborn. There are some genetic discrepancies that can happen. You have 3 different ones, and these all deal with external genitalia and the determining the sex of the child. You have androgen insensitivity syndrome, or AIS. That's genetically where the infant is male, but can't respond to male hormones. What happens is then they are classic female because they basically have no male hormones in them. Now, women and men both have female and male hormones. In men, you have more testosterone. In women, you have more estrogen. So what happens in these androgen, the AIS babies, is that they, even though they're technically male with the Y gene, when you look at them, they are classic female, including female genitalia, because they don't respond to the male hormone at all. And there's no way that you would know that unless they did genetic testing or something happened that they had to look at that. Because most people don't look at genetic testing to determine the sex of their child. They usually, the baby comes out and they say, oh, it's a girl, or oh, it's a boy. They don't generally look further than that. Another problem is congenital and adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH. The fetus is exposed to excessive amounts of male hormone or testosterone with little effect to external genitalia of genetic females. So this would be females exposed to high amounts of testosterone. That is a problem. And then there's also the 5-alpha reductase syndrome. This is extremely rare, and it's when an infant is born with ambiguous genitalia at birth. They may have both male and female, or you just can't tell one or the other. So generally, they tend to masculinize at puberty. So those are some interesting things that you should look at, some possible issues. Now, I thought this growth scale was kind of weird. I was like, dude, that's an alien baby. What is going on with that? So what this is a growth chart, and it's looking at proportions, not actual sizes. So when you're looking at this, you're looking at a 4-month-old in utero baby. So it's still in gestation, and it's at 4 months old. It is mostly made up of the head, and that's about it. And then by 5 months, you have the more traditional proportions in utero. And then a newborn is going to be more proportionate and more closer to an adult proportions. It did say that the trunk part, or this middle part of the body, does stay proportionate throughout the entire life. It does not change. The head size and the legs and limbs may change, but the trunks pretty much stays proportionate throughout the entire lifespan. On the bottom right, we have talking about milestones that babies get, their social and physical milestones, like being able to sit up, rolling on their belly, things like that. And then in the left here, we have another graph that's talking about congenital adrenal hyperplasia, where they are exposed to male hormones for both female and male, and talking about what preference for toys that they have. So you can see there's a big difference in girls' toys versus boys' toys. All right. So let's talk about Piaget. Piaget has got a theory that covers different spans of the life. It starts with the sensory motor stage. That's from birth to 2 years. And it's characterized by active exploration of the environment. Then you have the pre-operational stage from 2 to 6 years, usually the use of symbols, egocentric, limited on the ability of reasoning. Obviously, if you've ever seen a 2-year-old, you would 100% see that. They don't understand general logic a lot of times. Concrete operational is from 6 to 12, and it's characterized by the logical but not necessarily abstract thinking. And then we have the formal operational stage from age 12 to adulthood. That's characterized by mature reasoning capabilities and that abstract thinking. So some criticisms of Piaget is mostly that some of these need to be updated and revised because they are much older and they are a little out of date for today's kids. And then we get into Vygotsky. He has the zone of proximal development. Basically, that's the zone between what I need help with and what I can do myself. That in-between area is the zone of proximal development. That's where you're learning. And that is his, central ideology there. Testing theory of mind, or TOM, it's basically where children recognize that their personal knowledge of the whereabouts of the ball is different from Sally's knowledge, and that they will predict correctly that she'll look in the basket. So talking about Sally's knowledge versus Anne's knowledge here, Sally puts the ball in the basket and then Sally goes away. So Anne moves the ball back to the box, and then Sally comes. What's Sally going to do? Is she going to look for the ball in her basket, or is she going to look for the ball in the box? So talking about those different theories there. Then we have parenting styles, different parenting styles for different parents. We have the authoritative, we have the authoritarian, we have the indulgent, and then we have uninvolved. All of these are on a gradient scale here of looking at behavioral scores versus grade level. And it just kind of looks at this based on high level of regulation versus low level of regulation. And all parents kind of go differently here. Sometimes you start out one way, and then as time goes on, you realize that's not working and you change to a different way. That's just learning as a parent and being able to move from one to the other. Okay. Puberty, they mainly talk about women's puberty here just because it's a visual Symbol of puberty is women starting their period, the menstruation. They did talk in the book about the change from the age of menstruation back in the 1800s was generally around 14 or 15 years old. And nowadays, the menstruation age is about 12 to 13 years old. And that has decreased as time has increased. You see kind of the median change would be around the 1920s. I think it has more to do with women changing the things that they do, their responsibilities, their work. That does have an effect on menstruation, the amount of work that you do. So they did talk about that. Adolescent brains, we've talked about this previously, but this is just talking about how in early development of Piaget's theories, they viewed the mind as mature at the outset of adolescence, the gray matter continuing to grow into adulthood. Although the pace slows and the cortex thins in some areas, areas shown in red and yellow are experiencing the greatest rates of growth, and that's going to be in the frontal lobe. So that's going to be the areas where they're having reasoning. Oh, I forgot to take that out. Sorry, guys. I forgot to take this middle section out. Anyways, just ignore that. Lawrence Kohlberg's stage of moral development. This is talking about pre-conventional, uses probability as reward and punishment, then conventional as maintaining reputation to follow the law, and post-conventional as following self-chosen ethical principles. Then we have Erickson's psychological stages. He actually has a couple more stages. If you want to see them all, I couldn't fit them in the clip I took. There is a little plus in the book right here. You can just go in there and click that, and it'll show the extra couple of stages. It just talks about how people grow through time and the different things that they do. And how they see the world overall. All right, ethnic identities. Identifies with an ethnic group appears to boost the overall self-esteem. I don't know why that is so blurry. That is really weird. Of African Americans and Hispanic teens during adolescent and young adults. So you can see the different colors here. Their ethnic identities. I don't know why that's so blurry. My goodness. I'm so sorry that that's so blurry there. I will try to fix that. But you can kind of see the ethnic identities. The Hispanic is the blue. African American's the top red one. And then the yellow is going to be white, I believe. So those ethnic identities go up during the teen years. That's when they really need that connection. I don't understand why all my pictures are all of a sudden blurry. All right, so I'm not really sure why these pictures are showing really blurry. On my side, they look fine, and hopefully you guys can pull these up and they look fine too. When I look at them below here, below the computer pane, they look fine. So I'm not really sure why they're all blurry here, but we'll go on and keep going, and if I have to, I can re-record. All right, so what is a family? Again, the picture's a little bit blurry. So I wanted to kind of do ambiguous family here because the book talks about different groupings of family. A married couple with children, most people consider that a family. A married couple without children, they still mostly consider that family. Single parents with children, unmarried couples with children, all those are still considered to be families. Same-sex couples with children, again, still families. Now, you get down to same-sex couples without children and unmarried couples without children. And that's where it starts really becoming more of like a 50-50 kind of situation. So just the definition of family kind of changes, and that's kind of important there. All right, so physical and cognitive changes during midlife. Women have menopause. That's where they have a period of irregular and slowing periods. That's usually in the 40s. They can have hot flashes, night sweats, headaches, joint pains, mood swings, sleep disturbance, all of those fun things. They can be treated with supplements, but a lot of times they don't really want to give medication like hormone replacement to women because that can increase their risk of cancer, of other issues, heart issues, things like that. So they really don't err on the side of giving hormone replacements, usually just some supplement things to treat the symptoms. Now, men are a little bit different. Men have gradual changes kind of throughout their life. Their sperm quality does reduce, but it doesn't totally go away, not like women's does. By the age of 80, they are still half as fertile as they were at 25. And they continue to produce sperm all the way up until they die, basically. They do have a decrease in testosterone in midlife, and that can have an effect on their sex life. So that is something that, midlife crisis and all that. But men are a little bit different than women in that they can continue to reproduce through their whole lifespan. Empty nesters, so we're talking about midlife after parents start seeing kids leaving and going off to college. Most Americans report a positive reaction to their last child leaving home. Reactions kind of vary across the country among Canadians or different ethnic groups. Empty nesters kind of have a different meaning. So the picture here shows different countries and kind of how people respond to children leaving, both men and women. Men are on the left and women are on the right. So looking at that, obviously Eastern India has a higher rate for both men and women. And then all the rest of the countries for women are pretty steady at about 20 to 30%, whereas the men in Britain are at about 17, and then China and Southern Europe are way down low on the list. All right, so depression rates decrease over the lifespan. So this is talking about just kind of lifetime depression, not specifically older people, but we are talking about that group generally. The contrast to stereotypes about sad older adults are highest in late adolescents and young adults and decrease over a lifetime. So actually, teenagers are more depressed than adults. I don't know why nobody's ever said that before, but between 18 and 25, females tend to be more depressed, and that goes down and decreases from 26 to 49 and then 50 to and over. Men tend to have a lower rate of depression, but that does not mean it does not still go down. It's just not as gradual as women. All right, so we're almost to the end. Social and emotional in late adulthood. So relationships continue to play important roles even in seniors' lives. Marriage is related to continuing good health. If they have something to live for and something to continue to move for and continue to go, they are more likely to have a longer and healthier life rather than, being old, sick grandma in a nursing home. So that is still super important for them in that point in their life. All right, guys, that is it for this week. Of course, this does not cover all the material in the chapter. It was a very long chapter this week, had a lot of material to get through, so make sure that you're at least looking at that. If you need help, I do have a class kick that I can give you that goes over a lot of it, but I didn't want to do that this week because it's just a lot. All right, guys, I am going to call this done, and if you have questions, just let me know. Talk to you later. Bye, guys.